All right, our Facebook live stream is just on the last little loading bar here, and I'll give you all a little note once we're live. Okay, folks, thanks so much for joining. We are live streaming. I'll pass it over to you, Carlo.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for all attending this town hall on the environment for Maple Ridge-Pitt Meadows. My name is Carlo Acuna, and I use the pronouns he and him. I am the ocean campaigner with the Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society, British Columbia, and I'm going to get us started here today. We are with you on Zoom, streaming live on Facebook, and later on we'll have a captioned version of this debate on YouTube. This election is coming at a critical time. Before all of us is a decision that could shape what our world looks like, not just a year from now or 4 years from now, but for generations to come. We are in the midst of a global pandemic, which has taught us that it is possible to make radical changes to the ways we live and work. We need to apply these lessons to the coinciding climate and biodiversity crises because they can no longer be ignored. So we are really honored to be hosting this important conversation with you tonight. We will begin with questions to the candidates in a moment, but I want to first acknowledge that Maple Ridge-Pitt Meadows is located on the unceded and stolen lands of the Kwantlen and Katzie First Nations, and lies within the shared territories of the Coast Salish peoples. I invite everyone watching and listening to recognize the unbroken relationship between Indigenous peoples and their lands and waters, and to honor their ongoing stewardship of the incredible places where we live, work, and play. I'd also like to remind you that this event, like all virtual events hosted by CPAWS-BC, is governed by our community guidelines for online spaces. The link to these guidelines can be found both in the Zoom chat and the Facebook comments. Now I want to introduce our moderator, Kate McMillan, who is our Coastal Campaign Manager. Kate, I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Carlo. Okay, so for those who are watching online, if there's anyone that you think should be with us tonight, please feel free to send them a direct link to our Facebook Live, or you're welcome to share on your social media. You will see the direct Facebook Live link in the chat box. So here's how our program will go tonight. Each candidate will be given 1 minute to first introduce themselves and just tell us a little bit about your own background. And then once both have spoken, I will pose questions on a range of topics from pandemic recovery to endangered species. Now, the order of response will alternate between you both as we work our way through the questions. And for each question, you each will have 90 seconds to respond. Now, don't worry, we will help you with time management. You can keep your eye on Carlo, who will be giving you either a 30-second or a 10-second warning. And if you run over, we will ring a bell. So so the first 5 questions were provided to the candidates in advance. With any remaining time, we will take some questions from the audience. We'd like to say thank you to those who did submit questions ahead of time when you registered. However, don't worry, there is still time to submit questions. So you can submit them either using the question and answer tab at the bottom of the screen if you are joining us via Zoom, or you can submit questions in the Facebook Live comment section. And from there, we'll choose some of your questions to pose to our candidates later on. Now, following the final question, each candidate will have 2 minutes to give closing remarks. Okay, so now without any further ado, we'd like to start with Cheryl Ashlie of the BC Liberal Party to introduce herself. So Cheryl, you have 1 minute.
Thank you so much, and thank you. And I'd like to also acknowledge that we're on the unceded territory of Katzie Kwantlen First Nation. Thank you, Carlos, Carlo, for introducing that so nicely. So I am a resident of Maple Ridge. I grew up in first part of my life, Saskatchewan, moved to East Vancouver, and grew up moving onto a sailboat with my husband in '81, living there for 14 years, raising 3 kids, moving out to Maple Ridge, Pitt Meadows to establish ourselves, because if you've ever seen the size of a sailboat with 3 kids, it just gets smaller every day. And one boat can only hold so much Lego. So we moved out to Maple Ridge, and I immediately got involved in the community and advanced through my volunteering and advocacy for my kids' schools, and that onto school board for 3 terms, Maple Ridge Council for 2 terms. And through that whole journey, I always took the lens and the passion to oversee the environment and be involved in anything involving the environment. So when I was able to be on Maple Ridge Council as a liaison to Alouette River Management Society, when I decided not to run, I immediately joined that organization, and I've been there to this day. And I just really want to bring my perspective of what I believe the future generations are looking for, and just how I think and how I am as a person, and why I think I would be a good politician for you folks over in Victoria. I'm hoping you get an insight into me this evening, and how I think. So thank you for this opportunity so much.
Thank you, Cheryl. Now to Lisa Beare of the BC NDP.
Thank you so much, Kate. And I want to also begin by acknowledging and thank Carlo for acknowledging that I am speaking today from the territories of the Katzie and the Kwantlen First Nations. And I want to thank Cheryl and CPAWS for organizing today's important event. And most importantly, I want to thank everyone who's joining us online today and watching the live stream. We all share a love for our community, for Maple Ridge and Pitt Meadows, and for the natural beauty in our province. And I'm really looking forward to tonight's discussion. I want to say it's been a complete honor to represent Maple Ridge and Pitt Meadows as your MLA, and to serve as the Minister for Tourism, Arts and Culture for the province of British Columbia. To get the chance to serve is the privilege of a lifetime. And together we have accomplished a lot in the last 3 years, but we know there's more work to do. And I know these last few months have been extremely challenging, but every single British Columbian should be proud of how we've handled this pandemic together. And so with that, I look forward to our discussion tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay, so on to our first question, and we'll be starting with you, Lisa, this time. So the current health pandemic has shone a light on many parts of our society which are in need of fixing. Many see the creation of an economic recovery strategy as a time to rethink our current status quo and to rebuild in a more sustainable and just way. What priorities would you put forward to ensure that a green recovery prioritizes people, nature, and climate? Lisa, you have 90 seconds.
Thanks, Kate. Well, we have to tackle climate change, and we have to do it for our kids, for our jobs, for our economy, and for our future and in our environment. Under John Horgan's leadership, we launched Clean BC, which is the most ambitious climate plan on the continent. It's both a climate action plan and an economic plan. We developed it with Dr. Weaver, and it's all about putting British Columbia on the path to a cleaner, better future while protecting our air, our land, and our water. And looking ahead, our platform doubles down on Clean BC with specific measures to strengthen and expand it, including a commitment to reach net zero emissions by 2050. It positions us for economic recovery for the future while prioritizing people, the nature, and the climate by increasing carbon price rebates for low and middle income families, by providing electric vehicle and home efficiency upgrades, investing $105 million this year for incentives for industry to move to cleaner options, and directing $106 million over 3 years to help our schools, our hospitals, and our universities reduce their energy consumption. Because at the end of the day, we need to build an economic recovery that puts people first and benefits all British Columbians. And I'm tremendously proud to have been part of a government that takes these responsibilities seriously and is acting on them. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay, Cheryl, same question. What priorities would you put forward to ensure that a green recovery prioritizes people, nature, and climate? You also have 90 seconds.
Thank you, Kate. So thank you for focusing this question on my own priorities, because I personally have a number of priorities, but I believe my first one has the ability to provide a foundation for other priorities. So within our platform, we have committed to ensuring decisions in every ministry across government are made with the environmental improvement as an overarching goal. So I think that's a very significant piece to really focus on. So with this in mind, my first priority that I would bring forward would be to be putting meaning to this commitment by requesting demonstrable actions from each ministry that could be immediately applied to recovery initiatives in the ministries as a whole. Hearing a lot on the doorsteps about everything, and although COVID is there, people are still talking futuristic. They want to know, after we're out of this, what are we going to do? So it's like immediately with COVID and as the ministries as a whole. For example, for all the ministries related to job creation and economic development, attention will need to be paid to about the 4 to 16% of businesses that will collapse due to COVID, and the 67% that are not working at full capacity. We need government to step in and really trigger changes to consumer behavior, because we have an opportunity right now. People are going to start looking at the economy differently. So we have an opportunity to insert that green economy in that recovery piece and really change consumer behaviors with that. And I think our platform, with looking at it through the environmental lens, really gives an opportunity for me to prioritize that. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so on to our next question. British Columbia has 1,807 species of animals and plants at risk of extinction. That is more than any other province or territory in Canada. This includes the boreal caribou and the southern resident killer whales, two species which have gained a lot of media attention. Scientists tell us that the extinction of these unique species can be avoided by putting strong recovery plans into practice. Habitat destruction is the most significant issue that is threatening wildlife. The Government of Canada recommenced recently recommitted to protecting 25% of the lands and oceans by 2025 and 30% by 2030. A recent survey found that almost all of British Columbians support the idea of a BC government protecting at least 25% of our lands and oceans in the province as well. If elected, how would your government meet or exceed these targets to protect critical ecosystems and stabilize our climate through nature conservation? And how would you prioritize urgent habitat protection for species like the caribou or orca? So Cheryl, you have 90 seconds.
Okay, thank you, Kate. So there's bodies of work that I know that such as the DFO recovery strategy for the northern and southern killer whale. I did a lot of research in those areas that they're being embraced and the strategies are being implemented. I also know that the caribou issue, it must be resolved. My understanding that the NDP did a recent review on that, but it wasn't inclusive, and there's a lot of controversy around where they went with that, because there is this, constant pressure between saving a species and not at the same time losing a lot of rural resource jobs and that. So there's definitely a lot of work that needs to be done into that. I don't have the answers for that, but I know it is top of mind and has to be addressed once in government for sure. I believe our platform does provide tools to address the orca body of work and other aquatic areas, but until I know more about how we balance the resource sector in the rural BC so communities aren't shut down, the caribou one for me is definitely one I have to learn a lot about. Some of the tools that I believe that will assist with improving the area of need in our fish and wildlife section of our platform, which allows some leverages to enhance work. I'm hoping everybody has seen our platform, but some of the highlights are definitely the minister responsible for fisheries and coastline to enhance and protect our water and fish resources. I know that the NDP stepped away from ensuring the hunting and other wildlife fees are used to fund the enhancement of our wild spaces and wild population. We're definitely going to do that. I think they've re-announced it, but if you look at the NDP track record with their platform last time, it's pretty much a failure rate on what they promised in the last election. Is that me? Is that it done? Oh, that was a quick 90 seconds. Okay, anyways, look at our platform. Thank you.
The little bell is not so loud.
Oh, it's not. And sorry, Carla, but I completely tune you out. I'm so sorry.
but thank you. So Lisa, how would your government meet or exceed the targets to protect critical ecosystems, stabilize our climate, and prioritize urgent habitat protection? You also have 90 seconds.
Thanks, Kate. So the BC NDP understand that to protect the southern mountain caribou and the southern resident orcas, we must protect the ecosystems that they depend on. Our 2020 platform details a comprehensive approach that is based in reconciliation and built on the work that we've done over the past 3 years. Our government would partner with Indigenous communities and others to create a watershed protection strategy. We would continue our groundbreaking work to protect our wild salmon by developing and implementing a coastal protection strategy, supporting both the wild salmon and the southern resident orcas that depend on them. And earlier this year, our government partnered with the Saulteaux and the West Moberly First Nations and the federal government to achieve an historic agreement that strives to protect southern mountain caribou. And this included a commitment to protect over 700,000 hectares of important caribou habitat in northern eastern BC. Our platform commits to protecting more old growth ecosystems while planting more trees, revitalizing our forests with new investments in forest health and wildfire prevention, because these investments in habitat conservation will support vulnerable wildlife populations and also play an important role in helping us to mitigate and adapt to climate change. I look forward to continuing that work. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Thank you both for your answers. So we're moving on to question 3 now. Experts agree that a healthy ocean is vital to people and communities. Oceans moderate climate, clean the air, and support ecological, cultural, and economic well-being. A recent survey of British Columbians found that 94% of people view ocean health as either very important or extremely important. Marine protected areas are a tried and tested tool to improve marine health. If elected, how would marine protected areas fit into your government's plan for a healthy ocean and coastal communities? Lisa, you will be starting and you have 90 seconds.
Thank you, and thanks, Kate, for the question. BC's extensive coastline, supports our vibrant ecosystem and so many coastal communities. The protection of our coasts and our oceans is critically important for our economy, for the thousands of families in BC who depend on them, and for our future. And our NDP government will develop and implement a new provincial coastal strategy to better protect coastal habitat and our coastal economies. And we're going to develop this strategy in partnership with Indigenous communities, with federal and with local governments. And we're going to continue our work with the federal government to address freighter traffic management and anchorage around the southern Vancouver Island and the Gulf Islands. Because we know that one of the most critical issues that are facing our coast are the effects of climate change. And everything from rising sea levels to ocean water quality is encompassed in that. And that's why I'm proud, under John Horgan's leadership, BC has the most ambitious climate action plan in the continent to protect our coasts, our oceans, and our communities. And our government already has mandated, it's in every single minister's mandate letter, that we follow Clean BC within all of our actions in all of our ministries. We are doing that work today. And I'm looking forward to continue doing that. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Cheryl, same question for you. If elected, how would marine protected areas fit into your plans for a healthy ocean and coastal communities? You also have 90 seconds.
Thank you. So I know that there was a Canada BC Marine Protected Area Strategy produced in 2014. I tried to find it, but it's no longer online. But I guess with, because the NDP have cut spending on matters related to fish, wildlife, and the environment, I thought maybe that's why I couldn't find the document. But although our platform does not speak specifically to MPAs, it makes sense that strategies like the Canada BC one or updated version should be implemented for protecting aquatic life. I've seen this being initiated under a Minister of Fisheries and Coastline that we are pledging to create. I would be definitely the goal of picking the work back up on where the BC Liberals left off on that and expediting it for sure. We personally have an off-grid property in the Gulf Islands, and I've been actively involved in the freighter parking issue. And I think anybody who's been there really realizes how over in the last three and a half years, it's just really increased exponentially. And it does absolutely impact the surrounding area. So I know that the study was delayed due to COVID and that, the federal study that was reviewing all the anchorages. So that piece of, a body of work I've been actively involved in, but I really believe strongly that with the creation of our ministry and with my commitment to this area and my experience with it, I'm just really looking forward to getting over there and making sure that we look at the best strategies, what's already there on record as needing to be done, and just getting the work done.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Okay, so on to question 4. And this is on an issue that is near and dear to CPAWS-BC. So BC Park Systems hosts some of the province's most beautiful and unique places, while also providing some of the most accessible outdoor recreation opportunities. Despite stewarding some of BC's most cherished places, BC's provincial parks have been chronically underfunded since the early 2000s. And this summer, we saw record attendance and demand for outdoor experiences in BC parks. From a crashing reservation website to parking lots full by 9 a.m. on weekends, and parks such as local favorites like Golden Ears Provincial Park appear to be consistently at maximum capacity. If elected, how would your government support a revitalization of provincial parks in BC so they can support visitors and wildlife for years to come? So Cheryl, we'll be starting with you. You have 90 seconds.
Thank you, Kate, and you're really looking like you're enjoying these questions, so thank you. So we would restore the NDP's cuts to BC parks because we are actually very, very proud of our landscapes. We would double the number of provincial park campsites in areas with growing demand, improve safe parking and other amenities and high-use day areas to conserve our natural heritage and protect backcountry access, create new environmental work experience opportunities for young people in provincial parks and habitat management, through a new work experience for students program in collaboration with the federal government. And we would work with Indigenous peoples to provide interpretation and education services in parks and enhance cultural and environmental understanding, and improve the frustrating BC Park camping reservation system to provide short notice camping options for local residents and make the reservations process fair for all. I think I really need to stop hearing my kids complain about that one. So that would probably be an immediate priority fix for me so that that area could be addressed. That seems like a very quick fix. So yeah, those are our commitments under that area. And again, taking up all of the work that we did previously as a BC Liberal with the amount of parks that we created during our tenure and conservatories, etc., that work would just pick right back up. Thank you.
Thank you, Cheryl. Okay, Lisa, same question for you. If elected, how would your government support a revitalization of provincial parks in BC so they can support visitors and wildlife for years to come?
Thank you, Kate. Absolutely, we'll support our revitalization of provincial parks in BC. We know that our parks are integral to who we are as British Columbians. They steward some of the most spectacular natural wonders on the planet, really. And they're a way of life for us here in BC. And they're critical to our economy. As the Minister of Tourism, Arts and Culture, I know that people come to supernatural British Columbia from all over the globe to experience our pristine parks and our natural beauty. And every generation is charged with protecting our parks for those who come after us. So yes, a re-elected NDP government will expand BC's popular provincial parks like Golden Ears in my hometown. We created 65 new camp spaces this past year, and there's definitely more to do. We'll be creating new campgrounds, trails, protected areas, while increasing funding to improve infrastructure and protect park ecosystems. And we'll reflect Indigenous people's histories and cultures in provincial parks and in wilderness areas. And this year, we're investing over $25 million in projects that will improve park infrastructure and create jobs restoring ecosystems, removing invasive species. We've made changes at Golden Ears here specifically to ensure that our visitors are able to access same-day reservations so that people can travel to their park in their own backyard.
Thank you,
Oh, thank you.
Sorry.
Not a loud bell, Lisa.
No, I didn't hear it at all. Carlo,
You gotta be shaken.
There,
You need a cowbell or something.
Yeah.
Okay, so we have one last question that we've prepared. So if you are joining us online, whether through Zoom or on Facebook, Get those questions in because we will be moving on to those shortly. So question number 5. Parks and protected areas provide a multitude of benefits, including acting as a nature-based solution against threats like climate change. New research shows that the total number of birds, mammals, amphibians, and reptiles was as high or higher on lands managed or co-managed by Indigenous communities than other protected areas or parks. If elected, how would your government support the protection and management of large interconnected ecosystems on land and in our oceans in partnership with Indigenous stewards? So Lisa, we'll be starting with you and you have 90 seconds.
Thank you. And I think this is a really important question. Over the past 3 years, our BC NDP government has worked in partnership with our First Nations. And I think our commitment in a number of areas in which Indigenous-led conservation initiatives could play a role in protection and management. We are committed to creating a watershed protection strategy and to work with neighboring jurisdictions to cooperatively develop and invest in new strategies aimed at better protecting our shared wildlife, our habitat corridors, and Indigenous-led conservation initiatives should play important roles in both of these issues. We are committed to doing more to reflect Indigenous people's history, to reflect their cultures, make sure they're in our provincial parks and our wilderness areas. And we're going to support the expansion of Indigenous-led conservation initiatives to achieve those goals. Our provincial coastal strategy will be developed and implemented in partnership with First Nations. Ultimately, it will be for Indigenous communities to determine whether they see a role in Indigenous-led conservation initiatives in these or in any other initiatives that they prioritize. And we will continue our government-to-government work to explore this further with them. Thank you for the question.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay, Cheryl, same question. If elected, how would your government support the protection and management of large interconnected ecosystems on land and in our oceans in partnership with Indigenous stewards? You have 90 seconds.
Thank you. So definitely we need to make it a priority. And within our platform, we're committed to working to clearly define how the United Nations Declaration on Rights of Indigenous People, UNDRIP, relates to the land use decisions and existing case law regarding title held by Indigenous people and the right to self-determination. And I believe this question that you've asked of me should be framed within those last words, the right to self-determination. I believe that it needs to be led by First Nations as to how they see those partnership workings, where they want to go with these bodies of work and how they want to take their learnings and understanding and lead the way in those partnerships. For far too long, they have been told where they need to go, and we've fed them things that we think they need to hear, and we need to completely shift that dichotomy and make sure that they are the leaders of this. And I'm looking forward to those types of work. I've worked closely with Councillor Rick Bailey and our work around the Fish Passage body of work for the Alouette, South Alouette, and it's just really inspirational to see how they have their economic plans developing. They have their goals that they're setting for their citizens, and the ability for their leadership to really be inserted into this and lead the way is really quite exciting for me, because I've seen evidence of how they do get this body of work. I haven't seen evidence that the NDP actually followed through on what Lisa has said, because they have actually taken away a lot of clean energy projects that the First Nations were relying on. And instead, I think they returned it with some dirty energy being imported from the US and Alberta. I heard that bell, Carlo. That one came through. That one I heard. Thank you
both for those answers for our 5 questions that we prepared ahead of time. So this is one last call out to our audience. Remember, it's not too late to submit a question. You can either use the question and answered option at the bottom of the Zoom, or there is the chat in Facebook. So we do have some questions that we've pulled over. So we will be starting with you, Lisa, on this one, and then Cheryl, and then alternating. So the first question comes from Miranda. Miranda asks, what are your thoughts on allowing Indigenous communities to guide us on how to care for the environment and planning what the land will be used for? What role do you see this traditional knowledge playing as the next steps are taken? So Lisa, you have 90 seconds.
Great, thank you for the question. And I really appreciate it because over the past 3 years, our government has worked hard to advance reconciliation here in our province, to work in partnership, government to government with First Nations. We were absolutely honored to be able to table the UNDRIP in the legislature, to enshrine in legislation the rights of Indigenous peoples. It was a historic move, not only here in Canada, but across the globe. It was unanimously supported in the House. And it's this type of action, this type of commitment, to have in our minister mandate letters that every single minister must adhere to UNDRIP and follow the calls to truth and the calls to action from the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. It's vitally important to the work that we are doing. As the Minister of Tourism, Arts and Culture, I've been absolutely honored to continue to advance reconciliation through tourism and work with our First Nations on their land bases and what they want to see happen with their lands, to work with our tourism businesses and operators as we chart and find paths forward together. And I see Carla with the flag up, so I'll stop there, but I would love to keep talking on this one because it's such a great question and such an important issue, and I look forward to continuing the work.
Thank you, Lisa. Cheryl, would you like me to repeat the question for you?
Thanks, Kate. Thank you so much if you would.
Yeah, so from Miranda asks, what are your thoughts on allowing Indigenous communities to guide us on how to care for the environment and planning what the land will be used for? What role do you see this traditional knowledge playing as the next steps are taken?
Well, I think they're already taking the lead in a number of areas, and I think we just really work with them to expand that out. Like the Fish and Wildlife Compensation Program that is provides funding for habitat restoration and species protection, and that throughout the Lower Mainland around rivers and that. Catesy specifically in our community have really taken the lead on that. They've gone in and around the Alouette and they've replanted traditional plants that were harvested by Catesy First Nation that feeds into that whole ecosystem back into the community where, and forgive me, I don't know the plants, but they were a sort of tuber that the First Nations used to harvest and use as a food product. And just having that plant there then attracted different birds and attracted different species. And they've gone in and done a number of those projects and then educated, Alouette River Management Society, we had an education piece on it and we were able to see. So those boots on the ground for First Nations is already happening. So we just have to really embrace that, enable it to expand, make it more aware, because when I learned about it, I was very excited about it. And I thought, well, this is like going right back to replacing habitat around the river based on what the First Nations knew of when they used the river for all of their needs. And so, Miranda, to your question is, it's happening. We just got to make sure that it expands and that there's greater awareness and there's greater opportunity under the leadership of the First Nation in partnership with the government.
Thank you, Cheryl.
You bet.
So we have a second question from Diane, and Diane asks, and we'll be starting with you this time, Cheryl.
Okay.
Diane asks, do you support future development of any designated floodplain areas along the Alouette River? And if so, how can this be done safely? You have 90 seconds.
Oh, no. There's the official community plan has been created for a reason, and it has very low residential zoning around the river for the exact reason. We need to stay out of the floodplain. We need to not be building along the riverfront. I've been actively protesting one along with Alouette River Management Society, 240th Street development. We really, as a society, as human beings, we always look through the lens of what we need. And we figure that if we do the saw-off of giving a little bit to nature or the environment while we achieve what we need, like 30-meter setbacks, etc., that's the win. But it's not. We need to make sure that we come through that lens. When we commit to staying away from the river because it's the right thing to do, there should be no deviation from that. Increased zoning, increased density along the river should not be allowed. It should not. It's called density bonus provisions, and developers apply for it so that they can get into increased density because they give gifts to the community, you know, like more park or more conservation area and that. The river should be exempt from that. We should not be allowed to be doing that. And I would absolutely work very strongly against that. And this Maple Ridge Council knows how I feel about that. And I've always stood firm on that.
Thank you very much for your answer, Cheryl. Lisa, would you like me to repeat the question for you?
Yes, please do.
Okay, so Diane asks, do you support future development of any designated, do you support the development of any designated floodplain areas along the Alouette River? If so, how can this be done safely? You also have 90 seconds.
Thank you very much, Kate. And I absolutely agree with Cheryl. And no, I do not believe we should, in any of our watersheds that are critical, especially to our salmon habitat, we need to be protecting them, and that our government has committed to doing that. In fact, we helped develop alongside the federal government $143 million BC Salmon Restoration Fund. And we have committed to doubling that moving forward. We committed our Wild Salmon Advisory Council. You know, these are those type of things that need to be looked at. Decisions that are being made, you know, from inception to ocean for our salmon, for our other species at risk along these, you know, vital waterways. And so Cheryl and I are always going to agree on this, that, you know, the Alouette River in Maple Ridge is a treasure that we should be doing absolutely everything we can protect. And we will definitely do that moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Okay, so we have a question from Zoe. Lisa, we'll be starting with you this time.
Sure.
So Zoe asks, there are 5 pump stations to protect Pitt Meadows from flooding, but only 1 pump station on the Sturgeon Slough is in the process of becoming fish friendly. How can we get all the pumps to allow fish to pass back and forth without harming them? So Lisa, you have 90 seconds.
Thank you. And this is a great question because I know how, you know, how absolutely important it is to our community. We've been working alongside Casey First Nation, ARMS, BC Hydro, as we have these conversations in our community. You know, I'm committed to advancing all of our projects as quickly as possible. We do have our agreements already signed in place in our local communities, you know, that outline a 10-year framework on what fish-friendly infrastructure looks like on the Alouette. And there's more work to do across other areas of our community. But I agree, this is something we need to be working on together. We need critical First Nations consultation and support on these projects. That work is ongoing, and as your MLA, I am committed to trying to advance these projects as quickly as possible to protect our fish and our systems here in Maple Ridge and Pitt Meadows, but it must be done in consultation with First Nation and in partnerships with our organizations who are impacted by this. So thank you for the question.
Thank you, Lisa. Cheryl, would you like me to repeat the question for you?
Sure, quickly, if you don't mind. Thank
Oh
you.
yeah, no, of course. That's why I'm here. Zoe asks, there are 5 pump stations along to protect Pitt Meadows from flooding, but only 1 pump station on the Sturgeon Slough, which is in the process of becoming fish friendly. How can we get all the pumps to allow fish to pass back and forth without harming them? You have 90 seconds.
Thank you. Yeah, the whole dike system and that, and the management of it and the costs associated with keeping the dikes have been sort of like a hot potato between municipalities and the provincial government. And again, if we look back how we've developed everything to meet the needs of the people with diking or culverting or, you know, actually crossing right over streams without even bothering culverting, we're now obviously trying to reverse all those trends and those poor practices. So there's a lot of work to be done around that, and exactly like Lisa says, a lot of engagement and oversight of First Nations with this, because the technology is there, but in other ways too, there's knowing when the fish are moving through, when there is that, the need to be shutting systems down and having better technologies in the area. And that can only be learned by and worked with people, boots on the ground, understanding it. So I haven't been involved a lot in that project. Alouette River Management certainly was, and I know that the discussions around that in order to make those fish-friendly passage through the pump stations and the costs associated with it, we definitely need to move on all of that, like in so many ways, with our waterways in general, to get back to where we're literally starting to unclog all these barriers that we have actually, as you know, must have accumulated to the detriment of why we're no longer now seeing these species thrive. So definitely committed to that work. And it is definitely a body of work we can do with First Nations leadership.
Thank you, Cheryl. Thank you both for your answers.
You bet.
Okay, so we have a question from Annie. And so Cheryl, we'll be starting with you. So Annie asks, how would the Liberals student program that Cheryl spoke about differ from the current student ranger program that has been in place for the past 3 years? Could you both speak about your party's commitment to employing youth in parks? So Cheryl, you have 90 seconds.
Yeah, thank you. I would actually have to look up that because this is all new to me. Like I said, our platform got sort of handed to us, and this is all information that I know we've committed to, but I'd have to look into that and see what is the difference. And if, I would hope that we've researched something, that there is a federal, the project that we're purporting to do, that there's a federal component there that makes it more sustainable, makes it more robust, and able to offer more opportunities to students. But certainly from any perspective of engagement, when I look at what we offer at Alouette River Management Society with the federal program of summer students and that, and how much work we offer there and the opportunities, and then how those young people come back either as volunteers or actually go on to being placed in very important roles within. One of our volunteers just finished their training for DFO. So that was pretty exciting. So I know the imperative of ensuring that we're providing enough of these environmental student opportunities. And it just makes sense that that is the best way to enhance it, is through these types of education programs, partnership programs. And I guess I would look to the youth and to the folks who are using them to see, is there true benefit in them? And with anything, a quality improvement lens, you put on anything, you introduce something, you check it out and you check it. And then if it's working, you keep it in. If it's not, you adjust. So that's how I look at anything that I would introduce, is it would be that quality improvement lens of are we delivering the goal that we're trying to get to?
Thank you so much, Cheryl.
Thank you.
So Lisa, same question. Could you speak to your party's commitment to employing youth in parks? You have 90 seconds.
Thank you. And it's a great commitment or a great question, because I do know our government is deeply committed to this. Minister Heyman has been a strong advocate for ensuring that our youth are represented in parks, that are getting, access to jobs and training, as rangers, conservation officers, that we are supporting the future generation and developing that next wave of stewards for our parks and our wilderness here in BC. But we're going to continue to support our youth in a number of ways to access this. We want to make sure that they have education, the education they need to access any jobs, to help protect our parks and protect our environment. And so, we developed our BC Access Grant, which was the first new investment in post-secondary in 15 years, because we want to create more learning opportunities for our youth so that, they have that chance to get these jobs. Where we need to make sure that we are all doing our part and that we're leading by example with our youth. I have a daughter, a 5-year-old, and Cheryl will know, we agree on so much of this stuff, Cheryl and I. That I take her with me when we do our Rivers Day cleanups, and I bring her to the arms events or to our fish hatchery. And, she got to release 10 buckets of salmon fry last year into the Alouette River. And we talked about the life cycle and how they're coming back, and we go look at the fall and see them return. It's in installing those values. Oh, Carlos, sorry. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So we have another question from Susanna. So this time we will start with you, Lisa. So Susanna asks, what would you do to protect sensitive ecological areas from development? You have 90 seconds.
Thank you. So, there's a number of strategies we've been employing across the province, whether it's our coastal strategy that we're going to be developing moving forward, whether it's our old growth strategy where, we're ensuring we're protecting old growth forests and communities, and protecting them for families that depend on them, where we need to ensure that we are taking actions like everything from planting 300 million trees, which is, we did that this year, and that's more than any other year in BC's history. That we were able, as part of our old growth strategy, to protect almost 350,000 hectares of land to support this. The 700,000 hectares I talked about earlier for the caribou that we're protecting. Each of these things need to be addressed and taken a look at in a holistic approach. They need to be in consultation with First Nations, many of which are stewards of the lands that we are protecting. It needs to be in consultation, with organizations, like CPAWS and ARMS in my community, who have some great expertise on the field. And really, it's about a government who's has a willingness to listen and to do that work. And so we are committed to that at the BC NDP. And thank you for the question.
Thank you so much, Lisa. Thanks for the bell, Carlo. Heard it. Okay, Cheryl, same question for you. So Susanna asks, what would you do to protect sensitive ecological areas from development? You have 90 seconds.
Okay, thank you. Well, we do have to get more stringent in that around, and we do have to look through the lens of the species at risk and all of that and see the work that we can do around that. Because oftentimes when development comes in, the environmental assessments and that, with not having that very solid tool, it does allow for development to happen on sensitive land. So we have to really support municipalities and the regions to really lock down those wildlife corridors, those conservation areas. Communities have very, very good defined official community plans. And within them, they have their conservation lands and they have their wildlife corridors and that. But we can probably do a better job working collectively together. I firmly believe that there had been a very strong commitment through the government in this last 3 years when we were looking at the impact of the 240 Street development, which is really trying to, they're trying to ultimately get some lockdown conservation land around the Alouette River. If there was an agreement even with the metro region that acquisitions of those types of linear tracks will really protect those sensitive areas where there was funds and availability that we could collectively, municipality, region, province, and the feds work together to buy up and protect those lands. Municipalities wouldn't be forced into doing these negotiations with developers to get it, and we would get better outcomes. So we need to get better at these collective agreements at every layer of government.
Thank you, Cheryl.
Thank you.
So just keeping an eye on time, we have one last question. And so this comes from Christina. So Cheryl, we'll start with you. So Christina asks, recent polling shows that the climate crisis is one of the top 4 issues for British Columbians, and the #1 issue for people 35 and under. But in the last 3 years, the BC government has actually increased its subsidies to the very industry fueling the problem, oil and gas. Will you and your party commit to ending taxpayer handouts to the oil and gas companies? Cheryl, you have 90 seconds.
Thank you. One thing you're going to learn about me is I'm brutally honest, and I will never commit something that I can't deliver. And I honestly can't give you an answer on that, a yes or no answer on that. I know that we can no longer have a debate about climate change. We spent a number of years people debating that, and that's done. We need to move forward, and we need to figure out how is it that we can do everything possible to move the dial on that, along with having those more direct conversations that you've just asked for, a yes or no from a government. I can't give you that answer, but I do believe that there is enough will out there and collective smart thinking and very dedicated people to look at multiple solutions that if we put our full efforts into, we can definitely start moving the dial so that we can move away from the resource sector that we're dependent on right now, and all of those jobs into the clean energy, into those different avenues that then will replace those economies. We can't shut down the province tomorrow and expect us to be able to fund what we need the next day. We have to be able to work through that transition, but we have to expedite it. We do need to get to the root of why climate change is occurring, and we need to come up with those solutions. So my commitment to you would be honesty around that and work dedicated to it.
Thank you for your answer, Cheryl. Lisa, would you like me to repeat the question for you?
Sure, please, yeah.
Okay, so Christina asks, recent polling shows that the climate crisis is one of the top 4 issues for British Columbians and the #1 issue for people 35 and younger. But in the last 3 years, the BC government has actually increased its subsidies to the very industry fueling the problem, oil and gas. Will you and your party commit to ending taxpayer handouts to the oil and gas companies? Lisa, you have 90 seconds.
Thank you. And for Christina, I want to say thank you for the question because I know it's an important one. And I want her to know that we at the BC NDP will conduct a comprehensive review of oil and natural gas royalty credits. And we're going to do that from the environmental lens. It's important to recognize that we are working with industries, communities, First Nations, and workers to revitalize the industries that have helped build our province. We launched Clean BC, which is the most ambitious climate plan on the continent because we are moving BC towards a clean energy economy. And our platform commits to investing in a made in BC carbon capture technologies. We have entrepreneurs right here in BC that have already started the research and done the development. And we're going to support that work with strategic investments to further our net zero emissions. We have a goal of net zero 2050. We will fast track our industrial electrification strategy by working with the federal government so we can expand electrification and make it easier for industries to go green. And we are going to ramp up Clean BC's industrial emissions strategy so that more mines, pulp mills, oils and gas producing plants and other industrial facilities can reduce these harmful emissions. But we will conduct that comprehensive review of oil and gas royalties, and we'll do that with an environmental lens. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your answer, Lisa. Okay, so we are nearing the end of our program today. We are coming up on 7 p.m. I would like to thank everyone who submitted questions to the candidates, and our apologies if we didn't have time to get to yours. I will now give each candidate one more chance to speak directly to our audience. Lisa, you will be up first, and you will have 2 minutes to give your closing remarks.
Thank you so much, Kate. And I want to thank CPAWS for organizing today's forum and for all the great questions. This was a really good discussion. Cheryl, thank you so much for your discussion with me and with everyone else. And thank you to everyone who joined us online today. As I said before, we all love our community and we love our province, and we want what's best for everyone who calls it home. It has been an honor to serve as your MLA over these past 3.5 years. We've accomplished a lot and we know there's more work to do. You know, COVID-19 has tested us all, but it's also shown that we can pull together and we can confront and overcome big challenges like the ones we're talking about tonight. Now, as we look ahead, we need to build an economy that works for everyone and works for the environment. And under John Horgan's leadership, British Columbia has adopted the most forward-looking climate plan anywhere in North America. And through Clean BC, we are taking action to position our province for the jobs and the economy of the future. But we're doing it while by ensuring that we're protecting what is most precious to all of us. We want our children to inherit a province with clean air and water and a world that acts on climate change. And we want our next generation to be able to experience all the joys of our parks and our natural wilderness as we have. Our Clean BC plan helps get us there. Our John Horgan NDP government platform and plan for 2020 and beyond helps get us there. And we do it in a way that makes life better for our families, for our communities, for our environment, all across the province. And I know there are big challenges ahead, but we are working together and we can meet them. And I hope everyone will support me after tonight. Thank you so much, Kate and Carlo, for the time. And thank you, Cheryl, for participating alongside.
Thank you, Lisa. Cheryl, I think you have 2 minutes for your final remarks.
Okay, thanks, Kate, and thanks, CPAWS. It's been a pleasure doing this, and everybody who's viewed, thank you so much for joining us. I'm sure you have very busy lives. Yeah, I really wanted this opportunity to be able just to introduce myself and show the type of person I am. I did research after the last, I have to admit that after the last environmental discussion I had with Lisa with the Environmental Hub, I just feel like I got annihilated. Because in reality, with the snap election, the NDP had the lead up. They knew they were going to do it. They had their war book together. The Greens and ourselves were sort of caught on the back foot. So we didn't have all these government documents to pull and ream. I know when Doug Bing was in 2013, 2017, they too had that war book. But we both, the Greens, we don't even have a Green candidate because they were eliminated from democracy because of the snap election in this riding. But when I listen, and the last time when Lisa reamed off everything, that put me so off thinking, oh my gosh, I don't know my stuff here because I didn't have it. I then went on the Narwhal, September 21st, report card of the NDP written by Sarah Cox. And virtually they haven't delivered their platform. It's been a complete failure. The last 3 years, everything Lisa reamed off has not happened. If anything, they've gone in the other direction. And I'm sorry, Lisa, it's blatantly true, because with all the stuff that you said, I thought, well, we should have seen the dial move on things, and we haven't seen. A lot more trees, absolutely. And that's just the natural progression of what everybody should have been doing. It's a really good celebratory. But when you look at the platform, they did not deliver it. And now they're re-announcing the platform they didn't deliver. I think I would be disingenuous if I sat here and I said the BC Liberals have a better track record in every way. If the governments of the past had a better track record, we wouldn't be looking at species loss. We wouldn't be talking about the caribou. We wouldn't be talking about the orca. My integrity is that I'm going to get over there and I'm going to do the work, and I will never sit in front of you and tell you things that my government is doing when I know they're not doing it. I will give you the truth, and you'll get 150% from me, representing this community, not a party platform that was never delivered. I'm going to work with our party platform, and I'm going to make sure Maple Ridge Pitt Meadows is better at the end of my 4-year term. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cheryl. And that brings us to the end of tonight's town hall on the environment. I'm going to turn it back to Carlo for some final remarks. Off to you, Carlo.
Unmute.
Thank you so much, Kate, for leading us through this important conversation. On behalf of the Canadian Parks and Wilderness Society, British Columbia, I want to thank you all for tuning in today. And of course, I want to give a big thank you to our candidates, Cheryl Ashlie with the BC Liberal Party and Lisa Beare with the BC NDP, for taking time out during this busy election season and for their thoughtful responses. I invite you all to continue this conversation with your friends, your loved ones, and of course, these candidates. I hope that you can find a way to put nature on your ballot. Advanced voting for the 2020 BC election will remain open until tomorrow, October 21 at 8 p.m. If you received a mail-in voting package and haven't returned it yet, You should drop it off at your local voting place or electoral office rather than putting it in the mail. This will ensure that your vote is received in time to be counted. And of course, general voting will be held on Saturday, October 24. More information on all the ways to vote can be found by visiting elections.bc.ca. And that's all from us. So thank you again for watching, and good night.
Stay safe. Thank you, everybody. Take care.